President, the Joint Chiefs of Staff have approved a series of safeguards they say will maintain our security under the limited test ban treaty. But there seems to be some feeling in Congress that perhaps these safeguards won't be carried out as vigorously and as fully as some of the members of Congress would like. What do you have to say to that, sir?
Well, I don't know where that feeling would arise.
It's been raised.
Due to the fact that the four safeguards, as they suggested in the Chiefs of Staff, were all mentioned in my address to the Congress, which preceded their meeting. There's a letter going to the Congress in response to a request from the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Foreign Relations Committee, and we are going to describe in detail what steps we're going to take to implement the four safeguards. Now, the four safeguards consist of one, that we should keep our laboratories activated and vital. I've already met with Dr. Forster and Dr. Bradbury. We've talked with others. We're going to do that. Secondly, that we should prepare a standby so that if the treaty should be breached, abrogated, or if we should have what the treaty language describes as an imminent threat to our security, we would be prepared to resume testing. Already, we have begun to prepare Johnson Island for that unhappy eventuality if it should occur. $22 million has been already allocated. $11 million has already been put out in contracts. We are dredging the harbor. We're building some piers. There are dredges, 2 dredges already out there. So I can assure you that we're going ahead very rapidly in that area. Third, I think they suggested a vigorous series of underground tests. We've already in the last 2 years, we've conducted 97 tests underground. That's quite vigorous. And we are going to continue to carry on, as I've said, a vigorous series of tests, so that I think that the areas of concern, the feeling of the Joint Chiefs, when they endorse the test ban, that these areas should be met. I think that and the fourth area, as I remember, was that we improve our methods of detection. And on that, we have additional recommendations to make, which will be unanimously endorsed, I think, by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So we are just as anxious. We appreciate the concern of members of Congress, but this matter is of concern to us also, and I can assure them we're going to do the job.
Mr. President?
Yes, let's go.
Dr. Teller has charged that the administration curtailed the number of the atmospheric tests last year for what he called political reasons, in order not to alienate public opinion. And Senator Humphrey has called this a very serious charge. Could you say whether those atmospheric tests were curtailed and why?
No, we agreed. We had to set up a committee in the National Security Council headed by Dr. Seaborg, and we heard recommendations from the various laboratories, Los Alamos and Livermore, from the AEC, from the Department of Defense, and others, what tests would be most valuable. Obviously, we don't like to test in the atmosphere unless the test is essential. Every test in the atmosphere produces fallout, and we would be, it seems to me, remiss in not attempting to keep the number of tests to the minimum consistent with our national security. As you remember, there were 28 atmospheric tests. 28 atmospheric tests, 97, as I've said, underground tests. That's quite a lot of tests. Before that, there was a 3-year moratorium where there were no tests, underground or in the atmosphere. In addition, as you recall, we have to proceed with some care in deciding what tests. You remember one test went out and built an artificial Van Allen belt, which was far different from what had been imagined, which could have endangered our whole space program and indeed that of any other country. So we kept a careful eye, and we in fact did more tests, several more tests than we had originally planned 6 months before. So I don't think that the charge is valid. Quite obviously, we didn't test unnecessarily. Quite obviously, there may have been tests that Dr. Teller would like to have run. I don't know about that. But every test was considered by the National Security Council, was considered by the group of principals, of which Dr. Seaborg was the chairman. We carried out, as I say, several more tests, as I recall, than we had originally planned. We carried out in all 28. There may have been, as I say, several tests that different scientists wanted to run at one point or another. But I think we did the major tests, and I think they were an impressive series. But it'd be very difficult, I think, to satisfy Dr. Teller in this field. Yes.
Mr. President, Dr. Teller, in urging the Senate to reject the nuclear test ban today, said that it weakens American defenses and thus invites attack because the information that's necessary to develop a surefire anti-missile missile can only be developed through atmospheric tests. What do you have to say to this?
Well, I think Mr. McNamara answered that very clearly. Other scientists have answered it. I recognize Dr. Teller has made it very clear that he's opposed to it. He opposed it all last week and this week. Now, there are a good many other scientists with comparable experience. We have a scientific advisory committee to the president. We have other scientists who worked on nuclear matters. We have Nobel Prize winners and others. We have members of the military and others who think that the test ban is a source of strength to us. I understand Dr. Teller's opposed to it, but every day he's opposed to it, and I recognize that he's going to continue to be opposed to it. I think that the question was very clearly answered by Mr. McNamara on what effect the atmospheric test ban would have on the development of an anti-missile weapon. Now let's just think of the other side of it if we begin to test again, and the Soviet Union tests again, and others begin to test again. How much security do we have? As I said before in my message I said to the Congress, we needed only one test to develop the Hiroshima weapon. Now, to anyone who works in the laboratories today, a 30 megaton weapon is perhaps not as sophisticated as a 60 or 70 or 80 megaton weapon. But it's still many, many, many times, dozens of times stronger than the weapon that flattened Hiroshima and Nagasaki. How many weapons do you need and how many megatons do you need to destroy it? I said in my speech, what we now have on hand without any further testing will kill 300 million people in 1 hour. Now that's and I suppose they can even improve on that if it's necessary. So on your specific question, I refer you to Mr. McNamara's answer, which I think is the clearest and most specific answer that you could possibly get on what effect the atmospheric test ban will have on the development of this weapon.
Mr. President, in this connection, Utah scientists have announced that Utah children under 2 years have received from 2 to 28 times as much as radioactive iodine-131 last year in less than a month, as our government says is safe for an entire year. Does the government have any plans to examine some of these children to detect possible damage?
Well, I've seen the report about the radioiodine, and it is a matter of concern. As you know, the report is not unanimous. There's some controversy about it. And in addition, the standards that were set do not, I don't think we should mislead the people there that there is evidence on hand of a serious deterioration there. What, of course, is a matter of concern to us that we not continue. But we are looking into it. But I would say that as of now, that we do not believe that the health of the children involved has been adversely affected. What it does tell us, though of course these matters require further study, what it does tell us is it's very desirable to get a test ban.